What other roles do you think are going to be eliminated in some sense? Because you mentioned, and when we were chatting offline, just the tagging piece first, 90% was done by humans and 10% by machine, and now it's probably inverted.
So to your point about like, does AI kind of replace people's jobs? I do think that AI certainly makes people a lot more efficient. I think what I've seen to date is that hasn't translated into too many jobs actually going away and people just being able to be more productive. And that might mean, of course, that future hiring is curtailed. So I now know like people could do this faster. I don't need as many people. But to your point about, we were discussing like data tagging, right? And I was saying that a few years ago before AI, we probably had 90% of our stuff had to be tagged by a human, or at least a human had to review the tag, and 10% was like fully automated. And now it's probably the reverse of that. But what we were also saying is what that allows us to do is have a lot more rows pre-tagged, right? So what we're doing now is, we have credit card data and we've got 1 million companies tagged in there. Before we had, I don't know, let's say it was 100,000 or 80,000, right? And if you do the math, the humans are doing the same amount of work there. If you have humans doing 90% of 100,000, that's like 90,000. And so the humans are sort of doing the same amount of work, but now because the machines make them more productive, we're able to get a lot more. That gets us that long tail of companies. And for a lot of our investor clients that are looking at things like buy and build, the ability to get those smaller companies and track them is actually very valuable. I think for us, we see real benefits. But again, at least at this moment, the answer isn't we need a smaller team, right? It's just now that team they're like superheroes.
Yeah, we've seen some benefits on the headcount side, but really on the margin. I would say mostly in technology, where our data scientists and our engineers are getting more throughput, leveraging some tools. Hasn't really worked its way into the research side yet. I am very encouraged as companies develop more tools to leverage automating model building within Excel. I think that is a potential game changer for investment banking, for buy-side analysts, for sell-side research analysts. So eagerly awaiting those kind of technological improvements. But in general, it's kind of a waiting game in a sense.
To build on Mike's point, one of the things I'm concerned about is the training of many of the industries that are going to have disruption, particularly at the entry level, including sort of investment management and consulting. A lot of those first couple of years are awful years where you work a lot and you put a lot of time in to build models and sort of rip PowerPoints and do the things. And there's sort of a growth trajectory that you go on the other side of that, where you've learned from just by doing over and over again. I do have this concern as a guy who spent a lot of time in the office when I was younger about the training component and the sweat equity that goes into entry level across these different industries that aren't sort of that are more hands-on in terms of hands-on keys. There's news out, I think yesterday, that Palantir is now decided that college is no longer a thing and is bringing high schoolers in. We are seeing sort of an institutional sort of framework around how training young people work. Everybody's figured out the solution, but nobody's figured out how to solve the problem that's going to be created from it. Who's going to do the work?
I couldn't agree more. And I think the big problem is we might reach a point in the future where the AI is so good that it's okay if people were never in the trenches doing it themselves, because they never have to understand how it works. Like, I don't know how to calculate a square root by hand, but that's okay, because if I ever need a square root, I have a calculator in my pocket. And if you might get to a point where building a cash flow model is so straightforward that the AI just does it, and the fact that you don't know how to do it is okay. But we're not at that point right now at all. Right. And when the models generate stuff, the humans have to be able to look at it and understand, is this right or not? But it's much harder for someone who's, just out of college, doesn't have a lot of experience, to look at something that an AI created that kind of looks right and figure out, is this right? That's very hard to do. It's much harder to do than actually just building from scratch. So I agree. I think we're going to have, at least in the next 5 years, we're going to have a real problem of getting the junior people skilled in the right way. And it's going to be a challenge.
It's an interesting challenge because the junior people they're not experienced at managing people, but to get the most out of AI, and maybe the AI of a year or two from now will essentially be a management exercise.
I also wonder what are the social implications of people missing out on college and not being in the office. From our side, I still personally work with a lot of analysts. I haven't heard from clients that they're replacing analysts with AI. I do know that a lot of analysts work with AI. I've heard that. And we've also seen the demand for our raw data sources since the launch of ChatGPT increased significantly. And I think that's probably because AI has made it very cost effective to run your own models on our data. So instead of coming to us and buying our modeled estimates, you're just going to ingest our own data and you're going to do your own model. And again, those are not just big clients who do have the resources, but also like the smaller clients that usually wouldn't be doing that.